I had finally finished packing. I was going on a week-long fishing trip with two of my three best buddies, and while I was looking forward to it, I was also dreading it. My friends and I had been together since elementary school. We were probably much closer than brothers and had always enjoyed spending time together, but this trip was going to be different. Over the years, we've all done things in the same group: my three buddies, our wives, and me. When we were young, we even dated each of the women until we settled on the one we eventually married. On this trip, Kenny declined because he had a business meeting the Monday after we left that he just couldn't miss. He was scheduled to come later that week. Since he wasn't originally going to come, his wife Pam decided not to come until he did. Then a couple days before we left, Don found out that he had to be home for a meeting on Friday of the first week, so he had to leave to get home early. His wife decided not to go with us. When she found out that the wives would not be going at the beginning of the vacation, my wife Becky decided not to come with us. It was not the wonderful vacation we were used to spending together, and I was just upset. Usually when we went on trips together, we would all go together and have a great time. Heck, I was still having a great time before the trip. The rest of the year, our life left a lot to be desired. Sure, we did it, but maybe twice a week, and it was just a way to take the edge off. It was a big change from when we first got married. Although the change was gradual, it became really noticeable about 5 years ago. Many times I proposed and Becky refused. I was frustrated at first, but after a few small spats, I got over it. Anyway, that Thursday night I was in this state of mind. I was sitting at the den, drinking beer and relaxing while packing. Becky was upstairs putting the kids to bed. I heard her come downstairs and go into the kitchen. A few minutes later, Becky walked into the den and sat down in the chair next to me. She took a sip of wine and looked at me with a concerned expression on her face. "Honey," she said, "I need to have a serious talk with you. I know what I'm about to say will probably make you angry, but please promise to let me finish before you say anything. I promise to answer all your questions, but I need to say it now. I'm afraid. No, I should have told you something months ago, but I didn't know how to do it, and I needed to get some information for you first. I don't know why, but I felt a trickle of fear." Becky looked so sorry, so scared, but at the same time so determined that I realized what she wanted to talk to me about was some serious shit. Becky took a deep breath, another big sip of wine, and continued. "I know you haven't been happy with our life these past few years, honey. I haven't enjoyed most of our encounters either. Davy, I love you to death, but, well, honey, you're just not the same, and, David, I want to stay married to you. You're a wonderful father, a wonderful provider and friend, but I need more than you can give me in bed." I felt myself starting to boil over with anger. What had she said? I knew she wasn't letting me love her anymore, but what the hell was this whole week coming to? I knew her chimes had rung. I opened my mouth to reply, but Becky continued. She raised her hand and said, "David, you promised to let me talk before you said anything." I clenched my jaws and forced myself to relax in my chair as she continued. "David, I've met a man, no, I've known a man for some time now who has completely enamored me, and I can't live the way we used to. I intend to get on with it, and I don't want to go behind your back when I do. I will still take care of you, but you need to know that you may not get as much as you think you need. I just don't like being with you sexually, and I need to be with him. He makes me feel alive. It's just like when we first got married and—" I jumped up from my chair and started yelling at her. "You're a cheating bitch! How could you—" Becky stood up and jumped towards me. She pushed me backwards and I fell into the chair. She stood over me and continued. "Shut up. I told you that you wouldn't like what I had to say, but you promised to listen to me before you said anything. Now shut up and listen." I sat there in shock, and she stood there looking down at me. "I learned from Dawn about the divorce laws in this state, and you can't afford to divorce me. Honey, you're going to have to put up with me being with my new man. If you divorce me, I will receive at least 2/3 of your paycheck for alimony and child support. The court will award me the children and the house because I need it to take care of the children. I will get half of your savings and your retirement account. You will become destitute, unable to even afford decent housing or food of the quality you enjoy now. The children will grow up in a single-parent family with all the pain and heartache this will entail. For your sake, for the sake of your children, you must accept what I am about to do. For my part, I still love and respect you, but I just can't continue to live with the lousy sex life we have. Nothing will change for us anymore, honey. We'll still have our time, but you have to understand that every once in a while, I'll go out all night and maybe take a trip with my new lover, so we can have some alone time. I sat there in shock, feeling the anger building up and trying to contain myself. I watched as Becky pulled away and sat back in her chair. I licked my lips and took a deep breath. Finally, I said, "You're a goddamn liar, bitch. I thought I knew you. I thought you loved me, and now you're tearing my heart out with this. How long have you been cheating on me? Who is this bastard anyway?" Becky looked at me with some anger and said, "Calling me names isn't going to help me, honey. I hope you can get over your little grudge and we can live like we have for the past few years. I'm not going to tell you how long, when, or even where. I'm certainly not going to tell you who I'm having fun with. It's none of your business, and if I find out you're trying to find out, I'm going to have to do something you won't like. I'm going to tell you that I've had another lover for some time now, and I got tired of hiding it. I finally decided that you need to know, to hear it from me, because I know I can't live forever without you finding out, and I'm just tired of having to hide it secretly. I'm tired of having to come home early and clean so you don't suspect anything. I'm tired of never being able to spend the night in his arms. This way I can tell you I'm leaving and you can watch the kids while I take a leak. As for telling you who it is, I'll say it again. That will never happen. I know you'll try to do something about it, and then you'll go to jail or you'll be seriously injured and end up in the hospital. Either way, it will be bad because kids need you to work and support us. The kids need a father. I guarantee you will be held accountable if you find out who my lover is and do anything to him or me. Arrangements have already been made for you to be punished if you try to harm us." I sat back in shock at how coldly Becky laid out her information. She was so confident, so knowledgeable. It was obvious that this moment had been long planned. She had an answer for all my comments, for all my thoughts. I said, "Well, I better call the guys and tell them I'm not going on this damn trip. We've got some things to clear up, and I've got a lot to do." I reached for my phone, but Becky grabbed my arm. Becky looked me in the eye and said, "No, you're going on this trip. The kids are going to your parents' house as planned. I'm not going to be here alone for the next 2 weeks, and I don't want you around to get hurt or try to find out who I'm going to be with. You need time to get used to this. I've made sure you actually go on this trip, and you won't like it if you don't go. I can guarantee you'll regret changing your plans this late. My friends and I have made all the arrangements. We have informants in the city and almost anywhere else you go, and if you do anything to find out who my lover is or make any changes in our lives, I'll know about it, and you'll be brought out into the open. You will have to accept that I have an ironclad plan, and it will work for me. If you cooperate, I'll make sure you don't have a shitty life. You'll live your life the way you used to." Becky walked over to the desk and took an inch-thick envelope from the drawer where she kept her papers. She turned back to me and held it out to me. "Here, just so you'll believe me, we've prepared a written report of all your activities over the past month. Read it, and you'll see that we've got you pinned down. We know everything you do, and if you try to disrupt our plans, we'll know about it, and I'll take you out." Now I'm going to bed. I sat up in amazement. Who was this bitch, and what the hell had she done to my wife? I thought I knew her, and now it turned out she was a conniving, cheating whore? Finally, I opened the envelope and began to read. I was amazed. The report was so detailed I couldn't believe it. Hell, there were things in it that I didn't even remember until I read it and remembered. It must have cost thousands of dollars to compile. Was she connected to a millionaire or the mafia? According to the report, someone was following me around the clock. Hell, they'd even recorded the fact that I'd soiled my shirt at lunch one day and what I'd dropped on it, as well as the time and the cafe where it was done. They recorded every time I looked at a pretty woman, Yeah, I'm not dead yet, but I look it. And if I talk to her. It took me over 2 hours to read the report. Then I sat down and thought about it. Damn, some of the things in the report only I could have known about. Once or twice they listed things I said when I was alone, with one of my friends or with Becky. Damn, did my clothes or wallet have a bug in them? I sat down and thought about it. I intended to get rid of my cheating wife, but how to do it? Shit, I needed to talk to the guys. Maybe they'd have some ideas. After all, we'd been buddies since elementary school. Hell, we'd even dated the same women and slept with most of them together. I was pretty sure they were all having fun with Becky while we were dating. You could tell by the way we flirted with each other that we were closer than just friends. I, oh my God, I wondered if Becky could be with either of them. Hell, now I was afraid to even talk to any of my friends. If it was one of them, and I started planning something with them or asking for help, I'd let them know my plans, and they might interrupt me before I even started retaliating and getting a divorce. Damn it. I heard Becky walk up the stairs. She stood up and said, "So, Dave, are you going to bed, or are you going to sit there and sulk? I'm not going to wait for you all night." She turned, and I heard her walk back to our bedroom. I never made it to bed. I spent the night on the couch in the living room. Becky came in and woke me up as she started making breakfast. She was angry, and she let me know it. "Get your sorry ass up, Dave. You need to clean up and get ready for work before the kids notice you were up in your room last night. When you come back in 2 weeks, I expect you to behave normally. If you cause a rift in the family, I've already told you what the consequences will be. I'm perfectly willing to meet your needs, but I expect you to play your part too. But you should know that if you find another woman, I will divorce you." I felt myself starting to heat up with anger. I screamed, "What the hell? You can have fun with me and expect me to be okay with it, but I don't have the same right? Not that I'm going to do it, but why the hell do you think it's okay for you and not for me?" Becky smirked and replied, "Damn it, Dave. We both know that what you're getting from me right now is quite sufficient for your needs. If you go out and get something weird, it will only be as revenge. The only reason I have to go outside the marriage is because you can't fulfill your husbandly duties satisfactorily. If you could give me what I need, I would never step outside of our marriage, and I would expect the same treatment from you." I hissed. I was so angry I could hardly speak, but I finally managed to reply. "I just can't believe you. Not once have you come to me and asked me for more or a different way to make love. You never once asked me to do something in the bedroom that we don't normally do. How was I supposed to know that you wanted or needed something more if you didn't tell me? How was I supposed to know you were missing something if you acted like everything was fine and I was happy?" Becky just stood there looking at me and then said, "Well, if you're asking that so late, then you're really in the dark, aren't you? Besides, my dear, what you lack is not quantity but quality. You just never learned how to give me pleasure, and I figured you never would, so I started getting what I needed elsewhere. Now go and get dressed. I'm tired of listening to you whine." I went upstairs and did my usual morning chores. We had a quiet breakfast, and Sean, our son, asked what was wrong. I started to answer him, and then Becky intervened in the conversation. She said, "Your father is worried about a little problem he's been having. I'm sure he'll be back to normal after his vacation." She threw me a glance and then went back to her breakfast. When I got to work, I decided to ignore some of Becky's advice and cancel the trip with the guys. I was supposed to drive straight from work and meet them at our favorite Denny's, from where we would all drive together. I had a nice F-150 cab car, and we would load all the stuff in it and go from there. Roger would go with me, and Don would drive his car since he had to be back in town on Wednesday. I talked to Roger and told him that I had a problem and had to back out. I offered to let him borrow my truck to haul the gear. Roger said, "Oh no, Dave, that's not going to happen. I just got off the phone with Becky and she warned me that you might try to pull this. She said you've been under a lot of pressure lately and you've been working too hard. She had already talked to your secretary and confirmed that you didn't have anything important planned. I promised her that I would see to it that you went on this trip. Now, if I have to, I'll come and find you. You will come with us and enjoy yourself." I started to protest and just say no, but then fear gripped me. What if Roger? No. Becky said she was going away for the weekend and Roger would come with me. But wait, Kenny was staying home and coming in the middle of the week. Could that be him or someone else? Damn, I was stumped. I needed to do more thinking and planning. I needed to buy a stakeout. But how? From the report I read, I realized that Becky and her friends were tracking my credit card purchases and phone calls. They were even tracking cash withdrawals from the bank. They could detect atypical spending overnight. I was sitting at my desk, staring into space, when I got a call from Becky. As soon as I picked up the phone, she spoke to me. David, I told you that you had to go on your trip and that it wasn't in your best interest to try to find out who I was seeing. Roger just called me and told me you tried to back out. This is your final warning. Don't contact me or they'll put you in an institution and you'll never see your children again. Do I get it this time? She slammed the phone down and I sat back in shock. Roger had ratted me out. Hell, did that mean he was involved in all of this? Or was he a true friend and worried about me? Come to think of it, none of my old buddies seemed as close to me as they had a few years ago. It seemed like they were Becky's friends now, and I was just an errand boy. Could that be the case? No, not all of them. Well, I decided to make the trip and met up with the guys at Dennis's. We had dinner, they all cut in like we usually do, and I sat there moping around. Finally, Don asked me what was wrong. I looked at him and replied, Becky has gotten some damn stupid idea in her head, and I don't know how to deal with it. I have a hard time even believing she means what she told me, but if she does, my marriage is over. Roger looked at Don and said, Damn it, Don. You know how Becky acts. She called me today and told me that her lover was trying to cancel our little trip, and she wanted to make sure he went. She said that he had been upset and having a hard time living the last few days, and he really needed this vacation to get himself straightened out. I promised her that we would make sure he would come with us and have a good time. Don said, Yes, I've noticed myself that he's been a bit moody the last few months. He doesn't joke or smoke with us like he used to. I'm sure he needs a little mood adjustment and we can give it to him. I have beer and his favorite whiskey in the car. He turned to me and continued, Damn, buddy, nothing has ever come between us and our time at the cabin before. Hell, I know the ladies won't be there this time, but damn, it means we can drink more and tell more lies. I followed them out the door and we headed to the creek where we were fishing. It was only a 2-hour drive, so we got there just in time for a serious drink before bed. The next morning, both guys insisted on fishing, and we hit the road. I had forgotten some of the events of the last few days, but by the time we got back to the cabin, I was thinking about Becky again. I couldn't believe she meant what she said, but damn. On my own, instead of thinking about what I should do, I let the guys talk me into having a drink with them. After dinner, I was sitting down and lapping up my drink with them when Don looked at me and asked, Okay, Dave, come on. You look like you've lost your best friend, but I know you haven't because I'm still here. Why the hell are you so down? I decided what the hell. If I don't talk to someone I trust, I'm going to lose my mind. I knew I could trust these guys. Hell, we'd been best buddies since we started school. I told Don and Roger about the last few months, hell, the last 3 years of my marriage and deteriorating life, and then told them about the bomb Becky had set off Thursday night. When I finished, Don looked at me and said, Damn, Dave, are you sure that's what Becky said? Hell, I can't believe she could say or even think something like that. We've known her for years, and she's the kindest and most loving woman I can imagine. Yeah, me too. But that's exactly what she said as I recall. Is what she said really true? Don leaned back in his chair and said, Well, Dave, I can't tell you how the divorce will end, if that's what you're asking. But she's right about some things. For example, if she does do something like you say she wants to do, you're going to have to make a decision about what to do about it. If she is discreet, you need to ask yourself if family destruction and emotional damage to the kids, and even to you and Becky, is a good thing. The courts always side with the mother in custody cases. Unless she is proven to be unfit in some way, you will lose your children. She is right in that you will have to support the children until they are of age, as well as help with college tuition. Since she is not working, you will have to pay child support until she remarries, and in all likelihood, you will lose your house either to her or you will have to sell it and give her half of the money. You will have to give her at least half of your savings and retirement account, so yes, she is basically right. There is a formula for calculating child support, and it usually doesn't benefit the supporting parent. The court is very interested in making sure that children receive exceptional support. So if you divorce, you will likely lose at least 3/4 of your paycheck to child support. In addition, you will have to provide medical care for the children. Dave sat back in shock. Hearing this from his lawyer friend was far worse than hearing Becky say he'd go broke if he didn't accept her sleeping around. I should know. She won't tell me who she's with, and I have to know. When I find out, I'll make sure she's not with him anymore. Dave, as your friend, I understand what you have to say, but as a representative of the court, I have to tell you not to do this. I hate to tell you this, but it is my duty to report such things, and now if I hear that any of Becky's lovers have been hurt, I will be forced to report you. My advice to you is to get over it and go on with your life as normal. Maybe if she is cheating on you, she will change her mind or put it out of her mind. Either way, it seems to me that you would be much better off accepting it and maintaining the status quo. Don, I can't believe you're saying this. How would you feel if Shelley did something like that and threatened you? Are you telling me that you would just give up and accept her being cuckolded with you, like Becky intends to do to me? Don felt awkward and replied, No, I'd probably be as upset as you are, but I know Shelley wouldn't do anything like that. She's totally in love with me and knows I'm the best lover she could ever find. I make excellent money, and she wouldn't even think about losing access to it or hurting our kids or me. Buddy, you better accept your fate. If she has someone watching you as closely as you say she does, judging by the report she gave you, you're screwed. If you even try to find out who she's with, she'll find out and do something about it. Hell, from what you say, she's got you so turned on, she might even find out about this conversation. She knows where we're going, doesn't she? Shit. I didn't even think about that. Hell, now I've got something to think about. Dave was puzzled by Roger's smile, which didn't seem to leave his face throughout the conversation, and the strangely happy expression on Don's face. He couldn't believe that his friends could be so unconcerned about Becky shitting on him. Finally, he said, Well, screw it. Let's have another drink. The next morning, Dave got up before his two friends. He decided he wanted to be alone, so he grabbed his fishing gear and went upstream to his favorite fishing hole. He was just about to start fishing when his cell phone rang. He always carried it with him, but there were many places here where it didn't work due to poor signal. He was very surprised that he was able to catch a signal here. He saw that it was Becky and decided not to answer it. As soon as Becky left a message, he listened to it. He was amazed to hear her say, Honey, my sources tell me you got some very good advice from Don last night. I hope you take it. I love you, and you're too good a provider and father to lose him. But if you do something crazy, I can let you go, and you'll still take good care of the kids. Now have fun. Dave stared at the phone in shock. He knew the cabin had no cell service and no landline, so how did she know about the conversation between him and the boys? Oh shit. There must be a bug in his equipment and someone nearby to pick it up on the transmission. Had to see if he could find it later. Dave didn't notice Roger and Don, who were standing at the edge of the road while he listened to the message. They grinned and gave each other thumbs up and then disappeared into the woods, heading for the cabin. Roger looked at Don and said, Do you think this will help, or should we keep up the pressure for a while longer? I think we'll need to keep up the detailed reports for a month or two, and we should all tell him to just get over it. Hell, we're doing well at the moment, and if we can convince him to let her keep playing and spending nights and weekends with us, we'll be miles ahead. If we do it right, he'll let our wives know about the problem, and we'll tell them we've been helping him figure out the score on nights. It'll be a great cover. Dave fished until almost noon, but his heart wasn't in it. He spent most of his time thinking about his marriage and trying to figure out how to figure out who Becky was having an affair with. He also wanted to find a way to end it and get revenge. He knew he couldn't do that until he figured out who, when, where, and even why, if that was even possible. On Friday night, when Becky got word that the three friends were almost to the cabin, she turned to see the man who was with her. She walked over to him where he was sitting on the couch in her house and handed him a drink. She said, "Oh my God, I can't wait for the others to arrive. Shouldn't Dawn be here early Wednesday morning?" "Yes. Then you'll have both of us for 2 whole nights before I go help babysit your loving hubby." "Oh God, I'll be so glad when we can get all three of us together at once. I just hate being with only one or at most two of you. Do you think we've taken care of everything? I love him to death. He's a great provider and father. I don't want to lose him." "Yes, I think we can control him." "Yeah, I just hope Dave doesn't start talking to our wives and causing problems. You know, we've been doing well the last 3 years. I really think we should have been content with what we had instead of being greedy like we are now. I admit, the thought of being together all night or during a long drive is nice, but I'm not sure we can put that much pressure on old Davy. We may have awakened a monster." "Well, the bugs we planted and the little we've managed to find to make him look bad should make him back off. I just wish he wasn't so damn honest and honorable. I can't believe we couldn't find anything he did that was even remotely despicable. How can a man go into business for himself and not take advantage of the situation to make a little extra money? By the way, Becky, are you still following the finances and all the transactions like we talked about?" "Yes. I've managed to get the bank to put limits on what he can withdraw in cash, but there's nothing I can do about him writing checks. At least we can track them if he does. I wish I could keep a closer eye on the business somehow. Now I wish I had insisted he hire office workers so I could stay home with the kids and just be a housewife." Becky chuckled and continued, "Of course, if I hadn't arranged to stay home, we wouldn't have had as much fun as we do now. I was bored as hell just being with you a couple times a month and a few times a trip. At least with me staying home, we get to play more. And now, with this idea, we'll be able to play as much as we want. I think it's time for bed, love." By the river, Dave was sullen and distracted. His friends tried to talk to him and cheer him up, but they failed. Tuesday night, they got him drunk. After he fell into a drunken slumber, Dawn and Roger went out on the porch to talk quietly. Roger said, "I'm getting worried, Dawn. We've been talking to him for 4 days now, and he's getting more and more insistent about leaving Becky and getting revenge on her lover. He's almost ready to explode and go crazy. How are we going to control this thing now? Hell, it all sounded so nice and easy when we were working out a plan to control it and cradle her more often. What if he finds out and tells our wives?" Dawn said, "Oh, calm down, Roger. I can gut him in the divorce and make it look like she's a saint. Worst case scenario, she'll divorce him. So what? We only decided to try to do it because she said she wanted to keep the little twerp. We just have to make sure he and our wives don't find out about it so we don't get outed. We may have to resort to physical action, but that will have to wait until we see what happens in a week or two." And Dave couldn't hear clearly what the guys were talking about, but he was awake and could hear them talking on the porch. He knew they were upset that he was stubbornly unwilling to put up with Becky's cheating and thought they were going to have to convince him to be more cooperative about it. Now he was angry not only at her, but at them as well. Before he went back to sleep, he decided that he would deal with this without the help of his friends. Over the next few days, Dave became more and more distant from his friends. Roger and Kenny began to get seriously worried when all he would say about the situation was, "I'm going to find out who that bitch is having fun with, and she and they are going to pay in full." Finally, the day came when they had to return home. Roger was riding with Dave again. There was no talking in the truck. Kenny drove his car, and as soon as they got to an area with good cell service, he called Dawn. Dawn and Becky sat in Dave's living room and listened to Kenny talk about Dave. He's seething with anger. If nothing else, he's even angrier and more determined to make you pay than when I came to the cabin. I don't know what to do, but I suggest we cool off until he calms down. If he catches us, it could lead to trouble. Becky sat there in shock. Tears were streaming down her cheeks and she was almost choking. Don sat with his jaw clenched, his face red with anger. After they talked to Kenny for another minute or two, he hung up and Don turned to Becky. He pulled her to him soothingly. He said, "Becky, you don't have to worry. I didn't want to play hardball if it wasn't necessary, but it looks like we don't have a choice. See what he's like this weekend and let me know Sunday night. If it looks like he's going to cause problems, we'll file a lawsuit on Monday. I can freeze all your personal accounts and I think I can freeze the business accounts, provided all the expenses are approved by the court. We can convince the judge that he can rip you off and ruin the business if we don't get control from him." Late Friday night, Dave walked into his house and saw Becky sitting in the living room. Her eyes were red as if she had been crying. Her look was relaxed, like she had just been having fun. He felt himself shaking with anger. She followed him into the bedroom, and when he entered the bathroom, she tried to go in with him. He pushed her away and said, "Get out of here with your slutty ass. I was hoping I'd come home and straighten things out. But when I saw you today, I realized that's impossible. You may ruin me, but I guarantee I will get revenge on you and your lover or lovers in the end." After cleaning himself up, Dave quickly gathered all of his belongings that he could cram into the truck. He could hear Becky talking on the phone as he went in and out of the house. One of the last things he did was try to use the computer to transfer money from their joint accounts. He found the computer locked because the password had been changed. His jaws clenched with anger. He turned and saw Becky watching him. Becky looked regretful. "I was hoping you'd come to your senses and it wouldn't come to this. You know you're making a big mistake, don't you? I love you more than any man I've ever known. I don't want to lose you. If you keep this up, you'll lose the business and everything we've worked for. Just so you know, I've hired Don as my lawyer. I just talked to him and told him how you've been acting. He'll be in touch." Dave was shocked. He knew Don was her friend too, but hell, he'd been his friend and his lawyer since he'd started practicing. He couldn't believe Don would do this to him. Dave left the house and drove straight to his office and warehouse complex. He was going to live in his office and conference room for a while. On the way to the complex, he stopped at the gate and talked to the guard. "I'm having trouble with my wife. She and her lover are threatening me. I need you to call in extra security and keep outsiders off the compound." On Saturday, around 10 o'clock in the morning, Dave was leaving the compound to get breakfast when he was stopped at the gate. A man approached him and verified his identity before saying, "You have been served." He handed Dave an envelope and walked away. When Dave opened it, he saw a restraining order that said he could not come within 300 feet of his wife, children, or their home. There was also an order requiring the court to approve any spending from his personal or business accounts to prevent him from gutting the company before the divorce proceedings, which were due the following Monday. After breakfast, Dave went to his assistant's home. Opening the door, she said, "Dave, you look like hell. Is something wrong? I need to talk. I need help, and you're the only person I can trust. I'm sorry to bother you this weekend, but I have a problem, and I have absolutely no idea who I can trust or talk to. She stepped back and held the door open. "Come on in, Dave. Do you want coffee?" Dave followed her into the kitchen, where he saw her husband Thaddeus sitting at the table. Apparently, he had interrupted them during brunch. There were still plates of scrambled eggs on the table. "I'm sorry. I should probably get going. Thaddeus looked at Dave and said, "You look like hell, Dave. Sit down and talk to us, for heaven's sake." Slowly, Dave told them both what had happened in his life since 2 weeks ago last Thursday. Then he said, "I just don't know what to do now or how to help myself. My so-called best friends have spent the last 2 weeks trying to convince me to let Becky have a lover on the side. They say, from what she says, it's been going on for years and I haven't noticed anything. So why should I rock the boat? Now Don, my former best friend, is working with Becky as her attorney, and I'm mired in legal red tape. I can't even spend money for a living without court approval, and I won't get that until at least Monday. My best friend has taken Becky's case as her attorney, so I find myself cut off from her. I'm not even sure I have enough money for food. All my credit cards were declined when I tried to pay for breakfast. Gertrude leaned back in her chair and said, Dave, I just can't believe Becky would do that to you. She looked at her husband and said, If you need somewhere to stay, you can use one of our spare rooms. She turned to her husband and asked, Tad, can't we help him with money? Her husband only nodded his head in the affirmative. Dave sat at the table, leaning on his elbows and hanging his head. He had never felt so angry, so helpless, and so determined to make someone pay. Thad thought for a moment, then said, If everything you say is true, then you need some powerful help. I hope you don't have bugs in your clothes somewhere. His eyes narrowed, and he continued, Come with me, Dave. They walked down the stairs to the basement. They stopped at the foot of the stairs, and Thad said, Dave, strip right now and give me your clothes. There's a shower down there, and I'll get you some of my things to put on. I'll take them to the front door. After you get cleaned up, we'll talk. I don't think there are bugs in our house, but they could have followed you and installed a listening device that will pick up conversations outside. Dave changed into Thad's old sweatpants, and then all three of them went to the storm shelter built out of cement under the stairs. He felt silly as he started to talk, and Tad and Gertrude stopped him. They spent the next hour texting and planning what needed to be done. After they had considered all the options, Tad left to contact people he thought might be able to help Dave. It was decided that Dave would have minimal contact with these people, and Tad and Gertrude would lend him the money he needed to start the investigation. Becky was expected to cease her activities, but she and Dave's three friends were going to be watched for a while. On Sunday, Dave, Tad, and Gertrude had lunch together, while Becky, Don, Kenny, and Roger conferred at her house. Roger said, It's all worrying me. I'm not sure we should even be here tonight. What if Dave comes over and catches us? I think we should take it easy for a while until we get him under control. Why the hell did you even try to do that with him? Hell, we've had this for 3+ years, and you kept trying to get him to accept being a cuckold so we could have Becky more often. I'm afraid this is all going to blow up in our faces. I really hate that he spent so much time with his secretary and her husband yesterday, and our guy didn't hear a peep out of the house. Then Thaddeus leaves and they are left to watch Dave, not follow him. What if he did something for Dave? Stop whining. We've got Dave tied in knots. He can't get money to do anything, and we have enough surveillance on him to know if he farts before he even does. Right now, he's sitting with his goddamn pasty and her husband crying into his coffee. If he leaves, we get a phone call before he gets to the end of the block. He can't call from her phone or his cell phone, so we won't know what he's saying. Neither of them saw the man point a camera or microphone through the window in their direction. On Monday morning, Dave began looking for an attorney to represent him. He talked to several and made appointments with 2. He was at a loss because Don had been handling his cases for years, and now he was representing Becky, so he had to look for another. In the end, he decided to hire Sally Hawk. She made a strong impression at the interview, plus she came highly recommended. The first thing they did was to start proceedings to clear his business accounts and get enough money to live on. They also decided to hire another private detective firm to follow Becky. He authorized wiretapping his house and video surveillance. He authorized Sally to start divorce proceedings for adultery. Later that evening, Tad gave Dave the tape taken the night before. Naturally, Dave was heartbroken. What made him even angrier was that Becky was involved with all 3 of his friends. At least now he knew who his adversaries were. The next morning, he went to his office and made 5 copies of the disc. He sent one to each of his friends' wives, his lawyer, and kept one for himself, and put the original in a safety deposit box. He also posted the video on several internet sites using the real names of everyone involved. The site was set up as a pay site, and the money was transferred from a PayPal account to a bank in the Cayman Islands. He smirked because Don had apparently forgotten that he had given him a key to his office, and Dave had opened the site from there so that when he was tracked down, good old Don would take the blame. Several of Becky's friends and family members were emailed pictures of her in action. These were all done from the free computers in the college library, so he couldn't be blamed for it. He thought about using Don's office for it as well, but then realized that Don would never do anything like that, and it would look suspicious. Using the college computers was easy. He had done it many times in the past and never gotten caught. They were for students only, and you had to use your student ID and password to log in. Almost every time he went into the library or one of the computer labs, he found a machine that had been left on. He was using someone else's login, and even though the use was traced back to the college, it was traced back to that student, not him. There were no security cameras at the community college, so he didn't even have to worry about being photographed in the area. On Wednesday, Dave had a lot of fun answering phone calls from people who had seen the video. Early in the morning, he got a call from Becky crying. She said, "How could you do this? I thought you loved me. I told you it was only going to be entertainment because you couldn't give me what I needed. How could you ruin my life like that?" Dave laughed and said, "Rebecca, I'm not the one who ruined your life, you are. I'm just getting the retribution I promised you if you actually carry out your plans. Of course, I'm sure you've been deceiving me for a while, come to think of it. Surely often one of the guys must have made sure I left the house and didn't come back late. I've seen too many things over the past few years that didn't add up then, but now makes sense. When I'm done with you and those assholes, you're going to regret the day you did it." Later in the afternoon, he got a call from Becky's sister. She said, "You poor dumb bastard. I see you finally found out about your so-perfect wife. I guess you're the one who sent that bastard. I guess she and I can share boys now. I didn't know she was doing them until I got this." He felt himself flinch as she hung up. He could hear her maniacal laughter the rest of the night. Don called too, and as soon as Dave picked up the phone, he started yelling at him. When Dave heard who it was, he led him on. He managed to keep him in suspense for almost 15 minutes. Don threatened both physical and legal retaliation. The best part of his scathing tirade was, "You goddamn asshole. When I'm done with you, you're going to regret messing with me. Most of your money will go to us too. If you had just done what I told her to do, you'd still have your family, your money, and your life. I hope you like living in the ghetto, because that's where you'll end up when I'm done with you. I'll file every lawsuit I can find and squeeze all the money out of you defending myself against them." Later calls from Becky's parents were sad. Her mother was crying, asking, "Dave, how could you do this to Becky? I understand that what she did hurt you terribly, but throwing her pictures all over the house is just too vindictive. Couldn't you have dealt with it in a more civilized way?" By the time he decided to head home, Dave was satisfied with his actions. He was almost certain that the computerized answering machine system his company had installed would pay for itself just from what it recorded that day. When he'd bought it, he'd worried about how his then attorney and friend Don had asked him to set up the system with the service provider. As soon as the phone rang, the computer answered the call and alerted the recorder. The warning was issued to all callers before their call could be forwarded. It stated, "Thank you for calling the U.S. Central Inventory, Logistics, and Security Company. All telephone conversations are recorded for future reference. If you do not want your call recorded, please hang up. If you have not hung up and you know the extension number of the caller, dial it after the beep. If you don't know the number you want, press 0 and the operator will help you." Turns out the good lawyer didn't think of the warning, or was so angry he ignored it because all his threats and bragging were recorded after the warning, which he insisted the communications provider put on the system. Dave decided that would be poetic justice. Unfortunately, everyone in Becky's little group stopped seeing her after the cases were filed. It was lucky that Tad's friend had gotten the videotape and sound bites that first Saturday, because none of the private investigators had captured anything objectionable on video. They got a few incriminating phone calls, but most of them were so ambiguous as to be practically useless. One of the first things Sally did was to send information about Don to the State Bar Association. His license to practice law was immediately suspended, and then, even before the divorce proceedings and litigation were finalized, he was disbarred for life for his threats and unethical behavior. Dave's divorce went through, but Becky came out of it very bad. She ended up with about 25% of the couple's assets. Dave retained control of his company. Dave was awarded custody of the children, mostly because of a small painting that was not immediately noticed. Dave's legal battle with Don ended up being very successful as well. He was awarded $1.3 million for violating attorney-client privilege and for taking Becky as a client when he was acting as Dave's attorney. He was also, of course, reprimanded for having a sexual relationship with a client and many other ethics violations that resulted in fines to the state. By the time Dave was done with Don, he was nearly bankrupt. His wife Shelley was able to almost completely clean out the couple's remaining assets during the divorce. Kenny and Pam had divorced, and she had gotten most of his estate as well. To everyone's surprise, Roger and Trixie did not divorce. It seems she had succumbed to the lure of the three friends earlier and willingly participated in their debauchery. Unfortunately, Roger no longer liked the fact that his friends were using Trixie for their pleasures. It seems that when they were kicked out of the house, Don and Kenny moved in with Roger. One night, he attacked Don and Kenny, so much so that he ended up in the hospital. Charges were filed, Don and Kenny were convicted and sent to jail for a year. In the meantime, Roger and Trixie were divorced. Dave sat in his office for almost a year after his affairs were settled. He and Gertrude were discussing the latest article about Don, Kenny, and Roger's fight over Trixie. She asked, "Dave, have you ever talked to Rebecca? I know she can visit the kids under court supervision." Dave looked at her and replied, "No, we only talk when necessary, and that is only about the children. I have no desire to talk to her, and if I could get away with it, I would never see or hear from her again. I'm just curious. I mean, for years I thought you two were the most perfect couple, and then, well, I just always wondered if you knew why she did it. I just can't understand why a woman who loves her husband would do what she did." Dave sat back and looked at Gertrude. He felt his stomach clench, and then clenched his jaws and bit his upper lip. He opened the bottom drawer of his desk and pulled out a folder from there. Handing it across the desk to Gertrude, he said, "I don't know why I kept this letter. I don't even know why I agreed to read it. Do you remember about 7 months ago, Becky's mother came into the office in tears? She handed me this letter and insisted I read it before she left, and I did." Gertrude opened the folder and read the following. "My dear David, I know you think I no longer have the right to call you dear, but you are still the only man I love. I know I have lost you forever, but I need to bare my soul to you. I know I have caused you irreparable pain, but that was never my intention. I never intended to hurt you. I also never intended to cheat on you, but I did. I know you knew that I made love to all three of our friends when we were dating in high school. I know you made love to all three girls too. It never bothered any of us. The first time I cheated on you was about the same way. The year of our 9th anniversary, when Don and Shelley were having a Valentine's Day party, you had to work a major warehouse heist. I was so lonely, and I had too much to drink. I know it's no excuse, but I had a drink. Shelley had Don drive me home in our car. Kenny followed to drive Don home, and the rest of us helped clean up Don and Shelley's house. On the way home, Don kept reminding me of the fun he and Kenny had. He and Kenny took me into the house, and that's where it all started. I don't think I need to elaborate. A couple days later, Don and Roger came over when they found out you'd left town for another job. I tried not to let them in, but they begged, so I did. I knew it was wrong, but it felt so good. We spent the evening together again. From then on, at least once a month, I had 1, 2, and sometimes all 3 if they managed to get out, and you hardly caught us. I know you noticed that during the weekends and vacations we all spent together, some of the boys and I disappeared for long periods of time. I don't know how many times we almost got caught. God, the fear of being caught, almost caught, was so frightening to us all. We started talking and daydreaming about taking our time and not worrying about getting caught. Eventually, Don came up with an idea, which I expressed to you by letting me play. He told me what might happen if you divorced me. I was sure you loved me enough to let me play, And I was also sure you would never risk losing your children or your livelihood, so I went along with his plan. I am so, so sorry, my love, for doing this to you, to our family, but I was weak. Please, my darling, forgive me for being so weak. Yours forever, Becky. After reading the letter, Gertrude raised her head. Her eyes were moist, but her jaw clenched with anger. Dave, I really think she loves you more than anything in the world. I know she's hurting, but Dave, she was almost as much of a victim as you were. I think your good friend Don was a predator. You know we've both heard some very nasty rumors about him over the years. I wouldn't be surprised if he didn't purposely get her drunk that first night. I know that no man of high moral character, no true friend, would have taken advantage of her the way she says he did. Yes, I know Gertie, but I'm not sure she told me the whole truth. She always seemed more attentive to Don than I would have liked. I always laughed about it, but a few times we fought after parties because I thought she was too friendly, took too many liberties with him, but I never caught her or him doing anything that could have been a serious issue. I have to admit that after Don's call, when I finally caught them, thanks to you and Tad, I had enough doubts to have the kids' DNA tested. You can't imagine the relief I felt when the tests showed I was their father. Anyway, I believe she thinks she loves me, but I don't think it was really love. It was more of an infatuation, perhaps a deep sympathy. I was easy to live with. I was a good provider and father. Now I think I was the last choice, and we got married because, well, I don't know why she married me. I loved her to death, but I don't think she had such a deep love for me. I think that's why she cheated and kept doing it. I think she was selfish and only thought of her own pleasure, her own needs and wants. I am well shut out of her. Now, if only I could find a worthy replacement for her. The end. Thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed it. So subscribe to my channel and watch the next video.